Hi everybody, this is Craig Tanner for the Mindful Eye and the Daily Critique. Today's critique is the second in a series of critiques that I talked about starting a couple of weeks ago. Shorter critiques, I'm going to release maybe a couple a week for the next several, if not more, months. And these critiques, number one, are critiques that are question-based. You use the same daily critique submission form on our site to make the submission, but I need to know two things. I need to know what is the main subject of your picture. It could be an object in the image or it could be conceptual. And then it needs to be a picture that you have a question about. It could be a question about something technical. It could be conceptual. It could be the design of the image. In these critiques, I'm going to go straight in and really focus on your question and also what I feel about the image relative to the main thing that you're trying to communicate. And I'm also not going to pick and choose from these submissions. Every one of these submissions where I can see that you've identified a main subject and a question, I'm just going to look at the timestamp and I'm going to go in the order in which they were submitted. I've gotten some submissions so far, but not enough to say I'm going to cut this off. So this is a good time. You'd definitely like to get your image on the daily critique, even though it might take a month or so to make one of these submissions. And if I do get to the point where I have so many that it's going to take us way out in the future, then I'll say something. I'll say for now I'm going to hold off on accepting those kinds of submissions. So this is the second question-based and subject-based daily critique. Let's get into it. This image was submitted by Peter, who is an intermediate photographer from Montana. There's basic metadata here, Canon 7D, an effective focal length about 270 millimeters. And paraphrasing here, Peter's backstory, he says a local landmark caught on fire. It burned for a couple of hours. He got there at the end of the fire. And his idea was to depict the tiredness and the dejection of the firefighter after having put this fire out at the local landmark. Under questions and comments, Peter says that when he looks at this image, he thinks that there's a color cast back here. It's been created by the smoke. And he says, is that from the smoke? And if so, should it be removed? So first, let's talk about the color cast, because that's the question. No doubt about it, smoke, it's just like anything that you put in between a light source and a subject will change the frequency of the light. And a couple of my commercial landscape shoots and a shoot where I was photographing people, for different reasons, I had a lot of smoke in the atmosphere, and it will really warm things up like you're seeing here. You can tell from the light, these shadows are coming straight down. This is the brightest part of the day. So what should be blue sky back here has all of this amber color from the way the smoke is filtering the light. See the blue of the smoke down in here where it's close to the fire, but up in here you see the amber, and so this amber cast is happening everywhere in the image. So yes, it's from the smoke. Now what about the idea of removing it? In some respects, I think it's personal taste, because this warming up is happening. Most people have a reference point for the way fire does this to the light. It's really eerie in the middle of the day on a clear day to see the sky going very amber and the sort of color temperature of the light everywhere changing. If we're not shooting this for the newspaper, if it's not documentary, I could see possibly making a case to use a tool in the darkroom to get rid of the color cast to create more separation of the subjects. Clearly the main subjects are very warm. There's some blue in the smoke back here, but then there's this overall amber and a lot of amber right behind the firefighter that has a lot of warm. And if we were to get rid of some of that amber, it might create a little bit more physical depth in terms of the difference between warm and cool. I just used curves layer and used this eyedropper right here, and that will sample an image to set a gray point, and then I clicked on the part of the sky that was amber to get rid of some of that amber. And here's what that looks like. Here's before, and here is after. So that's a subtle change before and after, just create a little bit more color depth. And there's doubling it if you're having a hard time seeing it. And let me just real quick shift click, Command G, group this so we can look at before and after. So you can see what happens when we start to get rid of some of that amber and push more towards a true primary red, skin tone, things that are more color neutral in the scene. I think from a separation standpoint and color standpoint, I do like getting rid of the amber, but ultimately I want to go back to this idea of Peter's main subject and say something that I think is a lot more important. If Peter's going for tired and dejected, I think he's done an amazing job of capturing a moment where the body language of the firefighter, looking down with his foot back and the whole body kind of arched over so that all this energy is down and heavy, hands hanging down. fantastic job of seeing that and capturing that moment, particularly putting the firefighter in this negative space where you've got the fire still smoldering here in front and a lot of smoke in front. All that's fantastic relative to the main idea. But then for me, there are some other things that are running counter to that. And this is in no particular order. I'll just talk about them. It looks like this thing happened in the middle of the day. I mean, these shadows are coming straight down. So you have this light that even if you're not a photographer, it kind of reminds people of a bright day. And that energy and quality of the light and quantity of the light kind of runs counter to this concept of dejected. The other thing that's happening, colors have so much emotional baggage, and the emotional baggage of the color will sit out in front of the other concepts, like the image itself, so the shape of the firefighter, and then this baggage that comes with the color can also sit out in front of some other kind of emotional concept that you're going for. And yellow is a color that is incredibly high energy. Yellow makes us feel better. It's documented to make us feel better. It's a boundless color. It draws the eye more than any other color. So you have this super bright yellow. And then you have other colors that are extremely high energy. The amber and the red, more yellow, and the firefighter's protective helmet. All of that to me is sort of the opposite of being dejected. And then something else is happening. Peter shooting with a long lens, my guess would be he backed up and chose a long lens to compress the flames and the smoke, to lend more weight to the work and the devastation and all this, so that it has a lot of weight and it adds to the story of dejection and being tired from putting out the fire. But the long lens and getting back has also meant, from a proportion standpoint, that there's a lot of firefighter and not much fire and not much smoke. And my thinking may have been, if I want to say dejected and tired, is to include a lot more environment. It might not be there to include. I do not know. This building may go very long this way and not very long on the x-axis. But if it was there to include, my take may have been to go much wider, maybe get a little bit closer, and from a proportion standpoint, have a lot more context that shows the burning or smoldering and smoke. And all of that, from a proportion standpoint, it makes it look like this is way more devastating. There was a lot more work to do. Firefighter, the idea of the hero, very small in the context of this thing that's overwhelming. That seems to be more congruent with the main idea that Peter's going for. One of the things that I feel like we can do that'll be more powerful than the color cast idea, which in a lot of ways is just more about separation. Physical separation doesn't really change the vibe of the image that much. If anything, bringing that blue in might push it in the opposite direction that Peter wants to go. I personally would go to black and white here, and I do quite a bit of work on this, and this is what I would be looking at doing. First, black and white is going to get rid of the emotional baggage of these real high energy colors. The other thing black and white can let us do is it can let us increase local contrast in areas to add a lot more value to things that may be currently undervalued relative to what we're trying to say. Black and white will also let us just overall set a totally different feeling in terms of the mood of light. It's abstract to begin with. I can darken this whole thing way down and make it look more like it's a different time of day. And almost all of us know that one of the things that is very scary is fire and night. And we associate fire at night because we've been around fires for a very long time evolving. And then so many fires do happen at night when people go to sleep. That's the real scary time. So we could push towards that I think will add this to this lower sort of energy that Peter is going for. It's also going to help us to be able to get a lot more value in the smoke in the sky. Even though they're just subtle differences right now in the color version, we can make this seem like there's a lot more smoke in the background. Having said all that, here are all the changes at one time. So there's the after, and there is the before. It'll just be really interesting to see how you think about it. For me, when I look at the black and white, in some respects I get carried past the firefighter, and the smoke and the smoldering and all that seems to have a lot of weight, and then I come back to the firefighter almost as a silhouette. And this could almost be a nighttime shot where there is some kind of light that firefighters will put up that will help them to see what the work that they're doing, or could almost be potentially light from a street lamp or something. It doesn't have the same kind of middle of the day vibe or feeling that we did before. And there seems to be more of a proportional difference between fire and firefighter that might work better in the story. Love to hear your feedback. I want to say a big thank you to Peter and all the other people that are participating in this kind of critique. I personally am enjoying this. I think I'm going to enjoy it for a while. It really gives us a chance to be a lot more specific in terms of the work that we're doing, and for the most part, I don't know if it did today, it'll help to keep the videos a little bit shorter, which lots of people ask for content that's not so long. Thank you so much to Peter. Thank you so much to you for being here. Hope to see you again very soon in the Mindful Eye.